Welcome, I'm Asinus Ducat, and today I will briefly and shortly, but quite at length, talk about the depiction of gods, of pagan gods, in medieval manuscripts. Now, this is quite a long story, and we'll try to keep it short and simple, but that will not be possible. So, this will be divided into different parts, and this is only part 1. When you still think it's quite straightforward, meaning that part 2 is when you realize it is not. um, okay, so the depiction of pagan god mostly derives from Ovid texts. If you don't know Ovid, Publius Ovidius Naso, he was a Latin poet that lived at the turn of the millennium here. So he was born before the birth of Christ, and he died shortly after. And he wrote many things. One of the chief work that he wrote was the Ars Amatoria, Treatise of Love, the art of love, how to seduce young women, and you can use rape, among the many things you can use. There is one very clear and loud justification of rape. Is like, yeah, they say no, but after that they're happy. Basically, he says that in a very beautiful and more poetic language, but that's still, rape justification, rape culture. But that's not the only thing. He has many advice on how to seduce a young woman. First, where to find them. When you walk down in Rome, where can you find them? Over there, where you find them. And then also, if you go to the games with them and everything, how to behave, how not to fall into the friend zone, and everything. When she's sitting at the banquet, just help to put the cushion in the right place. If you want to stroke her breast, just pretend there is some dust on it, and you look like you're taking off the dust, and meanwhile, enjoy. Well, there can be dust, but if there isn't, still do it and pretend there was. So you have many advices. I think that treaty, it's a poetical work, the art of love, is sometimes played in theater that can be quite funny. And so first, Ovidius, he wrote a lot of heretical poems also, how he fell in love and everything, and he made a kind of parallel between love and war that lasted for centuries, and how the conquest of love resembles in some way the military conquest. So he created a few pictures and images regarding love that would endure centuries. That would, And but after some time, he decided to write something a bit more noble, and that was the Metamorphoses. So instead of talking about his own conquest, he would talk about the conquest of Jupiter. Basically, let's forget about human love. Let's talk about God's loves. But not only God love, many other stories. And so the Metamorphoses is a very long story, divided into 15 books. Never-ending stream of narration, where you jump from one story to another, from the creation of the world up until the reign of Augustus. So it has some kind of chronological setting, but at some point there will be many digressions, and when you think of from between book 3 and book 4, at book 3 you start with the kidnapping of Europe. So because of the kidnapping of Europe, Cadmos is sent by his father to find her, and never to return if he doesn't find her. If Cadmos can't find Europe, he doesn't have to come back. He cannot come back to his native city, native land of what was it again? Tyre. Yeah, so Phoenicia. He's a Phoenician prince. So he goes, and you can't find Europe. So he goes to Delphi, where he finds the oracle and asks, where do I find my sister? And the oracle is like, well, forget about your sister. If in your travels you find a white cow, just follow it. Okay, and found your own city. Okay, I'll do that. And in his travels, he finds a white cow and he follows it until what would later become the city of Thebes. And he has to kill a dragon, of course, because every Greek hero has to kill a dragon. And after he kills the dragon, he founds the city of Thebes. I'm getting there. And basically that's a lot, because Cadmos was considered as a educated prince. He's also the one who introduces the alphabet to the Greeks and everything. So you have that story, and then you have the story of the end of the life of Cadmus, that it's at the end of book 4 of the Metamorphoses, where Cadmus realized that his house, his family, his relatives, it's a total disaster. One of his grandchild has become a god, and that god killed the other grandchild, blah blah blah. It's a total disaster. So because the dragon that Cadmus killed was actually Ares, Mars' son, the son of Mars, the god of war. So yeah, you don't do that and then hope for the best. No. So basically, when he killed the dragon, he got cursed, and all his family suffered because of that. One of his grandchild, Pentheus, was ripped apart by his own mother, which was Cadmus' daughter. But not only her, also the other daughters. So he was ripped apart by his mother, aunts, and sister. Gory story. All because he wouldn't believe that Bacchus was actually a god, and Bacchus was another grandchild of Cadmus. Quite a story. I should have done a genealogical tree here, but I didn't expect to talk about that. But the thing is that between the start of the story of Cadmus and the very end, you have many other stories when you read the Metamorphoses. So you start with Cadmus, and because you start with Cadmus, then you will... what is the next story? Just after Cadmus? Yes, that is the story of Semele. Semele, that is the mother of Bacchus. Then you have the story of Bacchus. Then Bacchus taking over Thebes and killing his cousin. And you have a story of 4 women that doesn't believe in Bacchus being a god and living quite away from the town and telling each other stories. And so you have 4 women telling each a love story, and that's where you have Pyramus' Thisbe, Narcissus and Echo, and 2 other stories. And then we go back to the main thread, and then we go back to Cadmus. So yeah, so the Metamorphosis, it always works like that. You go from one story and you jump to another story, and at the end you land on your feet, but you've been through quite a travel. And also Ovid doesn't waste any time to introduce any of the character. You're supposed to know them all, okay? So when it talks about Cadmus, it's not describing Cadmus. When he talks about Jupiter, when he talks about Hercules, when he talks about Theseus, when he talks about Jason, he's not describing them. You know them. You're supposed to know them. So if you don't know anything about Greek mythology or Latin mythology, and you start to read the Metamorphoses, you get lost from the very start. You need an introduction. You need to have read a few things before. Sorry, I will pick up my nose. This is very sexy. But this is actually itching. Okay. So, Ovidus writes the Metamorphoses. And at the very end of the Metamorphoses, he writes a few verses saying, "My work will be immortal and will live forever." 2,000 years later, that is actually still true. And you're like, the balls of that guy. Because the work is very long and we have kept it all. We have kept it all. This is a miracle, actually. It is quite a miracle. But it also means that that work was considered as very important through time. So, what happened? In the 12th century, the scholars of the medieval scholars not rediscovered Ovid, but gave it a new importance. And notably, Ovid was read as a way to teach Latin. You would read the classical text of Ovid in order to be taught Latin and to discover it and to have a proper grammar. Basically, that's still what we do today in schools, in high schools. When you are taught Latin, you have to read Ovid and you have to read Virgil, and then you have to make a grammatical commentary and a lexical commentary and of the text. So basically, what we do today is what they did before. Same thing. But what happened is that when you are Christian and when you read all those stories, you're like, wait a second. This is not true. That can't be true, because the truth is given by God. The truth is in the Bible, not in the Metamorphoses. And also, those stories are quite scandalous. Really scandalous. Can we read a story like that? Is it the story of gods? And so, early Christians were very smart on finding ways to save the classical text of Virgil and Ovid and everything. For example, we have, I think, Progma. Well, there is a woman that was so clever. She used only the verses of Virgil, of the Aeneid, and with that, she rewrote the story of the Bible. So she took all the verses and, she copied, pasted, reassembled the text, and so you don't have the name of Adam and Eve, and you don't have the name of the other character of the other characters of the Bible, but you have the actual story of the Bible as given to you by Virgil, rearranged. So that was one way to save a classical text, because the thing is that when you read the Bible, it's from a literary perspective, it's quite boring. But when you read Virgil, when you read Ovid, you're like, oh my God, this is so gorgeous. Why should we burn those texts? They are so beautiful. So basically they tried to find ways to save the text, and ARNULF of ORLÉANS was Bishop of Orléans in the 12th century, and basically what he did is that he wrote a treaty called Allegoriae, and in that treaty not only, he gave an explanation, a gloss of the story of the Metamorphoses. He explained from a historical point of view, a moral point of view, and an allegorical point of view what the stories were really about. And if you take, for example, that was not him, that was Guillaume de Conches, but someone that was in the same line of thought. Guillaume de Conches wrote also a few glosses, and he gave an explanation for the story of Bacchus and Semele. So I have Bacchus over here, so let's stay on that. So you have the birth of Bacchus. The birth of Bacchus, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but basically Jupiter came on Earth, he found Semele, and she was beautiful, basically like her aunt Europe. He had seduced Europe, and now he was going to seduce the little niece, daughter of Cadmos, and he seduces Semele, and then, well, she's all proud, and she's being seduced by a god, and she's kind of flaunting and everything. So Juno is jealous, of course, and Juno goes down to Earth, and then she talks with Semele, pretending to be an old maid, an old woman, and she says, but are you sure he's a god? Because, man, they say one thing, well, the way he makes love to me, blah, blah, blah. No, but it's not because he makes love good to you. Are you really sure? Are you really sure he's the one he's the one who says he is? So Semele is a bit like, maybe I should double check that. So she meets again with Jupiter, and Jupiter is like, oh my darling, I love you so much, I would give you anything you want, anything, just ask. And she's like, I want to see your true face. If you are Jupiter, show me your true face. And he's like, oh, but if I do that, you will die. You're not supposed to see me in my true form. I'm divine and you're mortal, and you will die. And she's like, do it. But she was pregnant at the time. And so she dies in front of Jupiter. And Jupiter, to save the child, who is Bacchus, he takes it and puts it in his thighs. Now, there is a whole philological, actual explanation for that. Being born of your father's thigh, I think in Hebrew, I need to double check that. In this book, I found the explanation for that. So, Dionysus, I need to go to Dionysus. Now, there is a little story of how he was born. Yeah, many comparisons with Shiva too. Where did I find... Ah yes, there it is. Le fait que Dionysos soit né de la cuisse de Zeus n'est sans doute pas non plus une coïncidence. So the fact that Dionysus was born from Jupiter's thigh. Was it the thigh? It's not the thigh. The cuisse that's beneath the thigh. The thigh is above. How do I translate that? Let me see. Okay, so tell me. Yeah, that's the thigh. Okay, that was the thigh. The fact that Dionysus, so Bacchus is the Latin name, Dionysus is a Greek name, was born from the Jupiter's, well, Zeus' thigh is certainly not a coincidence. Most likely it was a Semitism, which the Greek have lost their signification. Yotzi Yarek, who comes from the thigh, meaning, very simply, the descendants of the man. And we also have a reference of, like, Jacob is being touched by an angel on the thigh in the Bible, and I think it has a link about the fact that he will have children, not have children. So the fact being born from the thigh was just colloquialism, I think. Colloquialism, meaning that you were born from, well, who was your father or something. The man from the child, the child from the man. Yeah. And so it was adapted into Greek, but it's like when you try to translate couch potato into French. Couch potato. It has a meaning in English, but you try to translate that into French. La patate canapé. It means nothing. You're like, what? La patate canapé. You're like, okay, and you see a potato on a couch, and you're like, okay, what does it mean? You know, it's that kind of translation that has no meaning once it's translated, and so basically it was taken literally by the Greek and turned into, well, that expression was apparently turned literally by the Greeks, and it made up for a very good story. It made up for a very good story. Okay, and why was I talking about Bacchus and Semele? It's very interesting, but why was I talking about that again? Yes, because of the explanation of that myth. So we have that, and then at some point, Jupiter, well, Bacchus is ready to be born, and he comes from the thigh of Jupiter. And being born from Jupiter's thigh also means that you have a lot of arrogance and everything. I think, or that you think of yourself to be very important. Être né de la cuisse de Jupiter. At least in French, that's what it means. I don't know in English, maybe. But Guillaume de Conches, who was, you know, among the same line of thinking of ARNULF of ORLÉANS, gave an explanation of that story, which has nothing to do with the gods. Meaning, oh, but that's actually, Bacchus represents the vine. You know, the vine, I think it's vine. You know, Yeah, the vine. You know, the vine that has the grapes that have on which you grow grapes so that you can produce wine. And so, but the vine is very sensitive to cold weather, and Juno represents the cold weather, and Jupiter represents the hot weather, and blah blah blah. Basically, that story is just an agricultural tale on how to grow your vine and how to be careful with the weather. Yeah. So that was a clever way, another clever way to justify the fact that you would read pagan stories. Because actually the story was not about the story, but about the meaning beneath the story. And believe it or not, Christ himself is hidden in those stories. When we come at Petrus Bercorius, we will come to him at the end of this stream. Bacchus just symbolizes Christ himself. Heresy. Yeah, but there was a way of thinking that a pagan tale, for example, could be interpreted in many ways, and they actually didn't care if those ways were not coinciding together. For example, you could interpret one pagan fable one way, and then the other way, the exact opposite way. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all, because they're not looking for the key that would give a wholesome explanation of all the tales. No, they are looking for every interpretation that gives some truth. Any interpretation of any pagan fable that gives any kind of truth is good to know, especially if it is true regarding as faith. So if beneath the story of Bacchus you can read the actual story of Christ, how he was born, how he died, how he resurrected, it's good, because from the pagan story that is all pretty and everything, you go back to the truth, that is the life of Christ, Jesus Christ. Well, the truth, what they consider the truth. Some people still consider it the truth. Myself, I will say I'm an agnostic, so okay. So there you go. It's a very other way of thinking. In case it can be considered as unrational. From a modern point of view, it'd be like, what? No way. Because when we look at works of art today, we think of what is the interpretation. You know, what is the interpretation of that work? What did the author meant? They didn't care. The meaning of a text was beyond the author's intent. They knew about the author's intent. They knew about Ovid's intent, you know, but they just didn't care, because what they really cared about was the truth. Not the intent of the author, but the truth that could be found beyond the author's intent. So that is quite crazy. And ARNULF of ORLÉANS wrote kind of an explanation of the Metamorphoses. He was also a grammarian, so he also gave grammatical explanations, vocabulary explanations of the Metamorphoses, and then a gloss, a general gloss of this myth or this fable should be interpreted that way, or could be understood that way, and could be understood that way. The historical story, for example, of Saturn, well, basically it's just the story of the first king of Crete, and etc., etc., etc. And they were not actually gods, they were very famous people that were believed to be gods after. Whew! Do you follow? And now we go to John of Gaunt. John of Gaunt was a universitarian from England that taught in Paris in the 13th century, and he wrote the Integumenta Ovidi. And now I will show you another manuscript. Let me show you a manuscript, quite a pretty one, where we will see the Integumenta. This one is already saved, so we go straight to it. We're not looking for anything, we go straight to it. This manuscript here that we find on Gallica, let's show maybe the first page. Okay, so we were over here. This is the start of the Metamorphoses. This is just a copy of the Metamorphoses in Nova First Animus. Okay, so this is the Metamorphoses. But after the text of the Metamorphoses, we do have a little poem that starts here. So here you have the end of the Metamorphoses, if I'm not mistaken. And here you have, I will zoom in on the text, another poem that actually explains the first poem. And here, for example, you have little notes to go faster. So you have here a little poem that gives you an interpretation of the fables and what they actually mean, or not actually, but what they could mean if you regard them from a true perspective. Yeah, so here for the, about the four temporibus, the sun and the moon, the winds, and I have opened something. So Frank T. Coulson has written a lot about this literature that I'm talking about right now, and he has written an article, a chapter actually in a book, that is Ovid's Metamorphoses in the School Tradition of France, 1180 to 1400. Text, manuscript traditions, manuscript settings by Frank T. Coulson. And he has written about that Integumenta Ovidi. So he writes that the Englishman John of Garland was born in 1195 and migrated to the University of Paris about 1217, where he began his teaching career, taking his name from the Clos de Garlande, in which some of the oldest Parisian schools were established. John remained at Paris for the remainder of his career, except for a brief period of Master of Grammar at the newly founded University of Toulouse from 1229 to 1232. He composed works in varied genres, including poetry, grammar, and rhetoric. His Integumenta Ovidi, probably written around 1234, consists of 520 elegiac verses wherein John seeks through allegory to uncover the hidden truths of the Ovidian fables. Okay, so let's try to find. Here you have the story of. You have the story of Europe. So let's find Europe. Europe, as I told, was at the beginning of book 3. Maybe we'll find Europe someone over here. De Bacchus, de Cadmos, de Europa. So here you have de Europa, the story of Europe. Jupiter Europam rapuit rate. So I'll go back to the article. Jupiter Europeam rapuit rate Taurus senila pictus erat Taurus nomine navis erat. Okay, which means Jupiter stole Europa away on a boat, which a bull was painted, and hence the ship was called Taurus. Yeah, and in that, apparently John directly alludes to Horace's invocation of Io in Ars Poetica. As Horace attests, Io, a wanderer, flees a fugitive cow. That is Io, and now we are in Europe. Okay, so whatever. But here the fact is that he actually says that, you know, in the story we have Jupiter turning into a bull and taking Europe away. But actually, well, when you read the two verses, it means that she fled on. She left her father and her father's land on a boat on which a Taurus was painted. So you have a lot of little verses like this in this manuscript. Here we have about Bacchus, in filii propria et apraeda de septam semelem corpus de se solutum. Yeah, that is an explanation we have, I think, in Fulgentius. About simile, there is a wrong, false etymology about simile, that it would mean the corpus solutus, meaning the corpus solutus in a way means that the easygoing girl, you know, the girl with an easygoing body, you know, that with an open body. she doesn't have an open mind, she has an open body. So yeah, simile etymologically through fake etymology would mean that, and he gives here that explanation in the manuscript in his little verses. So here, what is funny is that the commentary of Ovidius' text is given in another poetical form, and a very short, condensed form too, so that you don't have to read very large glosses. You just have to remember the poem, that poem. If you remember that poem, you will remember all the glosses. It's actually very clever, because it's much more easier to remember something through the form of poetry. Remember when you were a kid and you had to learn by heart many poems. For example, in French schools, we have to remember the fables of Jean de La Fontaine. And even now, I'm pretty sure that every adult that has been in a French school can at least recite 2, 3, 4 verses of any fable of Jean de La Fontaine. Depends on which you had to remember by heart. But when you're at school, you have to remember a few poems by heart. And so that was actually a kind of didactic tool to give a poetical form of Ovidius' gloss and commentary, so that you would remember them all. What was that explanation of Europe's fable again? You know, the girl that was captured by Jupiter under the form of a bull. And then you remind yourself of the poem made, the Intercomenta Ovidi, made by John of Galen, and you're like, oh yeah, actually, he didn't turn into a bull, but she was on a boat. On which a bull was painted. Get it? Okay. Let's move on. The fact is that tradition of explanation really expanded to a point in which it would get quite crazy. So let's go back briefly here in the same manuscript. So this is a manuscript of the Metamorphoses, right? So here you have the start of the Metamorphoses, and you see it's just the text, just the poem in itself that is written here. But let's go to another manuscript, and let's move here to the Vulgate commentary that was written at the end, around the end of the 13th century. That is a text that has been worked on by Frank de Colson quite a lot, and there are many manuscripts that contain it, and we have different versions of that Vulgate commentary of Ovid's Metamorphoses. So let me find it. I think I have several copies. I have a copy I'll have to open a few manuscripts here because I don't remember which one exactly, because in my favorites I only have the the chef mark sometimes. So here is that one glossed. Oh yes, it is. So, but the gloss is a bit tenuous. You don't really see it very well. But so here again you have the Metamorphoses that starts here, and all around you have explanations, commentaries. Every time you see a little thing like a red thing here, it's another commentary. And another, and another. And not only that, you also have a commentary, explanations within the lines. So you have around the text, and you have within the lines of the text. When you have a difficult word, okay, this means that, this means that. Yeah, and here you have, but here the text is really, we don't see it very well. So I will open another manuscript. Here we see a bit better, but the ink is a bit faded. So let's open another manuscript, just to be, just making sure there is no pawn here on the tabs. Where did I put those manuscripts? Okay, Metamorphoses. I think this one is the... It's also a manuscript kept at the Vatican. Loading screen. Oh, yes, there we go. There we go. This one is very pretty. It's better to see something pretty, right? So here we have, again, the text of the Metamorphoses, line by line, those big thick lines, you know. Big beautiful thick lines in Gothic script. And then you have lines within the lines, you know, for a little commentary about the text. Here you have the incipit. And all around, you have explanation. You have glosses explaining to you what the stories in the text are really about. And this can get quite crazy when you look at this page, for example. Yeah, it can get really crazy. And so you have a tradition that, and look at that, you have 2 columns of commentary. Come on. No, they get really crazy with those glosses. So just to show you what a manuscript of the Metamorphoses started to look like around the 14th and 15th century, and also 13th century, of course, because commentaries piled up. And as I told you, even though they were contradictory, even though some glosses were contradicting each other, as long as it gave some version of something that was true, even though they were giving another explanation, for example, one gloss is interpreting the gods in a negative way, saying, oh yeah, it represents sin, and another says, oh, but actually it represents virtue. As long as the information on the sin and as long as the information on the virtue is true in itself and is true to the dogma, we don't care if we have 2 different interpretations of one same fable, of one same pagan figure. We don't give a damn. So you can have glosses, many glosses, contradictory glosses about the same fable. And then you would also have, here in this manuscript, you would have also grammatical notes, and so on. So you see, it can get quite complicated. Very, very complicated. Very, very rich tradition. So, yeah. Now, next point. So you see, we are advancing through time. First, we were with ARNULF of Orléans in the 12th century. Then John of Gaunt in the more like 13th century. Here also 13th century, a bit after John of Gaunt, because as we remind from Frank de Colson, he wrote the Integumenta Ovidi around 1234, I think, and here we are 1260, and now we have Petrus Bacchus in the 14th century. He will write in the 14th century, and Petrus Bacchus will write a full commentary, his own full commentary, his own full interpretation of the Metamorphoses in a text called Ovidius Moralizatus. Now, fasten your seatbelt, because that text was only the 15th book of a major work that was called a Reductorum Morale, in which he would give moral interpretations of many other texts and things and everything. Very, very long work, very long intellectual work. And the 15th book was Ovidius Moralizatus. And but as I told you at the beginning when I was talking about Ovid, Ovid doesn't give any any description of the gods. He doesn't really care. You're supposed to know them. When he writes, he's writing to a public, to an audience, to people that know those stories already, that know about Zeus, that know about Hercules, because those gods, those heroes are represented everywhere on every temple and everything, so you don't need to depict them in the poem. And also, Ovid was writing for the imperial court, you know, for people who had a lot of cultural background. So it would be an insult to his audience to actually take time to depict Zeus. No, so what he did was how to write the stories of Zeus, Jupiter, and other gods in the most beautiful way and make all of them intertwined together in one long good frame of stories. That was Ovid's purpose. But the text was so beautiful that it survived. When he said, this text will live forever, he meant it and he did it. Just thinking of it, I have a bit of a chill. Then we arrived to the famous, to Bercorius. And Bercorius is like, okay, so I'm giving a full commentary of Ovid's Metamorphoses, like ARNULF before me, like John of Gallon before me, like the anonymous author of the Vulgate commentary before me. But what did they look like, all those gods? So at the beginning, as a prologue to the Ovidus Moralizatus, Petrus Bercorius wrote a chapter that we can call De Formis Figurisque Deorum, about the form and shapes of pagan gods. I think I will burp, but no, I'm not burping. Okay, sorry for that. So he gives kind of introduction. Okay, so about Saturn, about Jupiter, about Mars, we can say this, this, and that. They were supposed to look like this, to look like that, to look like this, and all those attributes of them can be interpreted in this and that way, in this and that way, in this and that way. Okay? So, but in order to know how the gods look like, Petrus Bercorius went to a friend of his. He was like, okay, I'd like to introduce the gods, to introduce the main characters of the Metamorphoses, and depict them and give a moral interpretation of that depiction. Yeah. It's not even close to far-fetched yet. And I'd like to do that, but I need to know how they look like. So he went to his good friend, the most influential poet of his time, Petrarch. So he met Petrarch in Avignon. They both went to the court, the papal court of Avignon in the 14th century. They both were there around the same years. And Bercorius met Petrarch, and they were both high intellectual, both writing Latin, and basically Bercorius had access to the text Africa. And now Africa is a very important text, quite forgotten, I think, not in major intellectual academic circles and everything. I mean, the text has been edited, commented, and is still being worked on every day by new postdocs and new PhDs and everything. Okay? But when we think of Petrarch, we think of the Canzoniere. We think of his songs about Beatrice, I think. Beatrice? Was it Beatrice? Or Beatrice was Dante's? Well, I think it's Beatrice. And how he created the poem that would be the sonnet, and how he became the most influential poetical form for the next centuries. Like all the French poets of the 15th and 16th and then 17th and then even 18th century would write sonnets. You know, the exact form, respecting the exact form of the sonnet, and then adapting the same style as Petrarch. You know, Petrarch was known to oppose light and darkness in the same verse, the heat and cold in the same verse too, when he was depicting love. And actually there was an old Ovid's rhetoric that he was re-implementing in his own poetry. And so when we think of Petrarch, we think of the Canzoniere, we think of his love stories, we think of his love poems. But he wrote a poem that was Africa, and Africa was much more important for his contemporaries than the Canzoniere, because Africa was a poem that was so good that people wanted to crown him best poet of his time, and crown him with laurels and everything. And that is why Petrarch is often depicted with laurels. Let's find Petrarch just briefly. I wrote Petrarch in a wrong way. Yep, images. You see here he's with laurels. Laurels on his head. He's also been sculpted with laurels in Firenze on the side of the Galleria di Uffizi, I think. Yeah, here. You see? And now a bit side note on the laurels. It's also in Ovid's Metamorphoses. So, why would laurels be given to poets, do you think? Because the master of poets, Apollo himself, the god of poetry, wore laurels. Indeed. And why did he wear laurels? Because he chased Daphne. And that is a story that is also told in the Metamorphoses in book 1, I think. So, Apollo killed the mighty serpent, dragon, python. Kills it, and then he's very proud of his large bow, and he sees Cupido going over there. And he's mocking Cupido, because Cupido has a teeny tiny bow, and he's mocking him and saying, "Ha ha, you have such a teeny tiny bow. What can you do with that? Look at my bow. I killed the freaking python with that bow." And Cupido is like, "Oh yeah, really? So Cupido takes the arrow of love and shoots Apollo, and then takes the arrow of rejection and hits Daphne. Now, Apollo falls in love with Daphne, and Daphne is not in love with Apollo, so she runs away, and Apollo is chasing her. "But I'm a god, I'm the most beautiful of all the gods. Why would you be fleeing me?" And she's like, "Get away from me, you creep!" And she keeps running and running and running and running. At some point, she's so tired, and she gets by a river, and the river is inhabited by a god, of course, and she's begging that god to free her from that never-ending run. And that god, I forgot the name of that river, maybe Inachus? Maybe. We need to go back to the Metamorphoses. He's like, "Oh my poor darling," and shoop, he transforms Daphne into a laurel, the tree, you know. And this is very symbolic, because the laurel is the only tree with leaves that keeps its leaves during winter, that is always green. When you were told that only pines stay green in the winter, you also have the laurels. It's always green, so it's yeah, and it's also very tasty in your bolognese and amatriciana. So you can get some laurels. And back then, before then, Apollo was wearing a crown of shen. How is it called, that tree in English? Sorry, I didn't prepare everything. Oak. Yeah, so he has a crown of oak leaves, The oak is the symbol of Jupiter and is the son of Jupiter. And then he catches Daphne, but Daphne is turned into a tree. It's turned into a laurel. So he takes a few branches and crowns himself with that. So then you would have a poet being elected best poet of the year, best poet of the time, and everything, and they would receive the crown of laurels. And also the Caesars, they would receive the crown of laurels. So it was not only a symbol not only a symbol of mastery in poetry, but also a symbol of power, because Apollo also became the god of the sun. Basically, it used to be Helios, but it took over, and the sun became the most powerful figure in pagan religion. We have the feast of the Solis Invictus. Then we have the cult of Mithra in later antiquity. The cult of the sun became the most important one, and there was no surprise. So Apollo was not only the master of poetry, and I think that he was also the patron god of Augustus, the first Caesar after Julius. And so there's no surprise that he would have a crown of laurels because of that, yeah. So the crown of laurels, very long story that is also brought to you by Ovid. Okay. So where was I? Petrarch. Petrarch wrote Africa, and Africa was a poem in Latin, and that poem was so beautiful that both the University of Paris and the city of Rome wanted to crown Petrarch best poet of the time. So they didn't really care about the canzoniere. Maybe he hadn't written it back then, but that was in Latin. And the main literature, the most important literature, was in Latin and not in vernacular language. And Petrarch was like, where am I going to be crowned? In Paris or in Rome? And at some point he decided that only one king among all the kings of Europe would be worthy to judge him. And that if that king, the king of Naples, was from the house of Anjou, maybe Robert of Anjou? Need to double check everything. When I'm doubting myself, you need to double check that. So he went to that king, the king of Naples, that I'm sure, and he presented the text to the king, and that king was very well educated, and he said, yes, indeed, this is the most beautiful work of poetry I've ever seen and ever read. And because of that, Petrarch decided to dedicate the text Africa to that king, and accepted the laurels, but in Rome, because he thought it would be symbolically more suiting. And he was crowned in Rome on the Capitol Hill, I think, by the Senate of Rome, crown of the laurels, for being the best poet of his time. And he was the first to be crowned like that since ancient times. And also Petrarch is the one that came up with the idea, the concept of the Middle Ages. He didn't formalize it, but he came up with the concept. But for him it's very funny because the Middle Ages starts at the year 60 AD and not 476 when Rome fell. For him, Rome fell as soon as you had another dynasty than an Italian dynasty on the throne of Rome. So the concept of Middle Ages was not formalized and settled yet. Also for the concept of Dark Ages. I found a very nice article about it. The Petrarch and the Dark Ages. I found it on JSTOR. It's quite easy to find it. You type in Dark Ages and Petrarch and on JSTOR, and you'll find it very easily. Now, but what is interesting, and how to pin up that story with all the rest I was saying, Africa is a very long poem that tells the story of Scipio Africanus. Oh my god, one of my favorite historical characters. And I think he's talking in that one about the elder and not the younger, but I'm not sure, so that is to take with caution. But I think he's talking about Scipio Africa the elder, so the one who fought Hannibal. And at some point there is one Roman, maybe I think that's Scipio, maybe that's Scipio Emilianus, so the Younger, Africanus the Younger, comes into a palace in Africa, royal palace, and in that royal palace you have depictions of the gods everywhere in the palace, very lavish description. So if you have read the novel Le Roman de la Rose from Umberto Eco, the novel of the rose, in which you have a very long description of the church, oh my god, never ending, a description of all the beasts on the church, even if beasts that have names that doesn't exist in that novel. I started to read that and then I was like, I can't, I'm sorry, I prefer to go back to Emile Zola. Give me back Germinal. So you have some... Nanu! Yeah, my dog is making a lot of noise. Now she's coming. Ça va mon petit bébé? Oh, petit bébé, dis bonjour. Dis bonjour au stream. Yeah. A lot of love. I love you. Yes, my little darling. Yes, my little darling. You're beautiful. Yes, yes, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. T'es la plus belle du monde. Oui. Oh là là, oh là là, oh là là. Oh. So you have that royal palace in Africa, and with lavish descriptions of the gods, and of course you have descriptions of them, how they looked like, because it's a description of how they are painted, how they are engraved, how they are sculpted. And so Bercorius took that text to write his own De Formis Figuris Quaediorum, which is the prologue and introduction to the Ovidis Moralizatus. That is the 15th volume of the Reduxiorum Morale. And well, now I need to show you at least one manuscript of yeah, but because to make it simple, Petrus Bercorius wrote two versions of the Ovidis Moralizatus. Because when he wrote the first version back in Avignon, he was given knowledge by the Bishop of Vitry that there was actually a description, there was actually a translation and full commentary in French, in ancient French, of Ovid's Metamorphoses. And he was like, oh, I need to read that. And so he wrote the Ovidis Moralizatus, then read the French translation with commentary, all in verses, of Ovid's Metamorphoses, and he wrote, several years later, another version of the Ovidis Moralizatus, but having apparently lost the notes he had from the first version. So he rewrote everything from head, and that is why you have two versions of the De Formis Figuris Quaediorum, and in the second version you have more descriptions, you have more heroes, more pagan gods included in the introduction. Okay? So where is the... yeah. Okay. And now I will show you. This will not be let me see. Yeah, I have a few manuscripts of Bercorius, the Ovidis Moralizatus. This one is not a very pretty one, but it belonged to the Abbey of St. Victor, so this is why it's interesting. Here you have the sigil, the coat of arms of the Abbey of St. Victor in Paris, and this is the start of the Ovidis Moralizatus, and here you have right there the introduction. No, that is not the introduction. That is like a summary. Yeah, that is actually a summary, because here you have it's like the table of contents, and here you have how it starts, and normally there should be the description of Saturn somewhere. Yes, here you have Jupiter, so Saturn is a bit before that. Okay, so let's dive in. Olim antiqui plures deos possunt quas so here it says that there were many gods and they were depicted in different ways. And here you have Saturn. Saturni pingebatur et ponebat se homo senex. So here you have the actual description, very short description on how Saturn is supposed to look like. And then you have the same for Jupiter, the same for Mars, the same for after Mars, who comes? Venus, then Mercury, then Diana. Why that order in particular, do you think? Why would it start with Saturn, and then Jupiter, and then Mars? Because those gods are the planetary gods. When you think of the planets, Saturn is the... If you think of the solar system, but not with the sun as the center of it, but the Earth. So you take the Earth as the point of reference of the center of the solar system. Then the farthest away that the eye could see back then, because they didn't know about Pluto, they didn't know about Neptune, they didn't know about Uranus. They didn't know about Uranus. So the farthest planet was Saturn, at the very edge of the solar system. Then you had Jupiter. Then you had Mars. Then you had Apollo, so the sun. Then you had Venus. Then you had Mercury. Shouldn't be Mercury father. Yeah. I don't know. I think Mercury should be... No, you have Mercury, then Venus. Or maybe there was a mix-up over there. Or maybe I'm mixing everything up. But the point is that. And then Diana, because Diana is the moon. Apollo is the sun, and Diana is the moon. Represents the moon. So Diana is the last one, which is the seventh one, because it's... also it fits with the astrological system. Because in the astrological system, if you consider the Earth is considered to be the center of the solar system, just as the point of reference. And then if you consider the Earth to be not the gravitational center, but the reference center, like what's the center of the Earth? It could be anything, it could be Rome, it could be... You can decide what center it is mathematically. So yeah, so whatever. Shut down the music. Now we have the Lord of the Ring. Isn't it nice? But when you look, if you are standing on the Earth, and if you look at the movements of Mercury, you would see that Mercury goes this, and go back, and then go back, and then go up and go back. And same for every planet but the Sun and the Moon. And we call that the retrograde movement, and sometimes you have jokes in TV shows. What is that? Mercury retrograde? Well, okay. Whatever. That was a bit of a liars. So we were here. So we start with Saturn, and here the writing too is not very pretty. It's called Gothica Libraria because it's a bit fast. Not very pretty. It's very pretty. It's very decent. Let's try if I can see another manuscript of Bacchus. I've saved several of them. I have one in Toulouse. Yes, that one is actually in color. Yeah. This one is a pretty one. How can I open it in the reader? Oh, let's open it big. And here you should understand that it is the Ovidus Moralizatus, but what do you see there? You see Adam and Eve and the snake and the tree and the forbidden fruit. So basically, the Ovidus Moralizatus is an attempt to drive back the pagan fables to the story of the Bible, and to actually show you and prove to you that within those fables you can make links to the Bible and Christian faith and everything. So it can be saved, because if through those stories you can find the story of the Bible, and you can find stories fitting to the Christian faith, then you can save them, of course, well, if you're clever enough. But it's not meaning at all, it's not pantheism, it is not at all saying, it needs to be very clear, that the story of Bacchus is actually the story of Christ, for example. No. Beyond the story of Bacchus, we can understand, we can find a truth. That is the story of God. And that is the only truth. It's not saying, oh, all the religions are the same. Not at all. There is only one true religion, that is the Christian religion. Well, according to Mercurius, of course, he was a theological doctor. You think it. And, yeah. Okay, so, yeah, and I love this little dragon over here. I found it very pretty. And, yeah, so this is also the Ovidus Moralizatus. And now, how can I come back to... Ah! Yeah, and so we have a few... pictures. Can I show more than just 10? So here we have all the pages. I think we have a few more illustrations, but not many more. Usually the Latin manuscripts were not heavily illuminated because they were destined for a scholarly audience, and these people just didn't care for the pictures. The pictures were there for the less clever audience, the less educated audiences that needed a kind of an introduction. Basically, here you also have the little dragon here. And yeah, so this is also Ovidus Moralizatus. Here you have a neater writing than the one we saw a bit before, and the manuscript is a bit more decorated, but you don't have many marginal glosses. Okay, so well, this, and here we are another website from the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique in France. And basically this website is wonderful because you can access digitized manuscript in basically every single town, every single French town. If one French town has a municipal library, and if that municipal library has manuscripts, medieval manuscripts, and if those are digitized, you can find them there. many ifs, but it's a gold mine of digitized manuscripts. Sometimes a bit harsh to peruse. Oh, here we have the Visionneuse. Yeah, okay, so can't zoom in though. Okay. Yeah. Voila. How to end this stream? How to end this stream? Well, I will end on some pictures and give you an idea to where we go for the next part, because that was only the first part, and on the next part we'll move from Latin literature to French literature, but not directly. The thing is that, as I told you, Mercurius gave a very short and easy description of the pagan gods, thanks to his reading of Petrarch's Africa. And those descriptions were used by artists to illuminate manuscripts. Yes! And many manuscripts indeed. So let's go. But manuscripts containing a great variety of works. So basically you can find descriptions of the illuminations of the pagan gods, for example, in the Chronique de Hainaut, in the Jeu des échecs amoureux moralisé from Everard de Conti, from the Ovid Moralisé, so the French translation of the Metamorphoses in verses with commentary included in it, from the Ovid Moralisé en prose, because that French translation in verse was then adapted into prose and then printed. It's another very long and very complicated story. I won't dive into that right now. And then you also have which one, two, I need to, yeah, I will just open my folder because I had a folder with that, just to remind my, oh. Okay, so, well, those, for example, the Chroniques de Hainaut, Ovid moralisé, Jeu des siècles moralisé, those are not the same work. These are different texts, okay? 3 different texts. And the Ovid moralisé, you have the first version in prose, the second version in prose, then you have the first printed edition, the second printed edition. Those are different works, okay? But in all those works, you'll find kind of the same depictions of the gods. They would share the same traits, and it's like a game of the 7 mistakes to find oh, they look the same and everything, but they're not really the same. Where did I put that manuscript? So I will leave on this one. Yeah, and yeah, okay. So I started with that one, and I will finish with that one after I've shown you a few stuff. Okay. Okay. So I just need a moment to collect my thoughts and to see where I put them. For example, the Ovid moralisé. Copy kept in Geneva. Here, move away. Here you have Saturn. You know, so he's depicted as an old man eating his children. Then you have a dragon. He has scythe, and here you have his children being Zeus, well, Jupiter, Juno. Neptune and Pluto, and Jupiter cuts his balls, cuts his dick, cuts him, throws his father's sex into the sea, and there rises Venus. All of that is contained in Petrarch in Bacchus' depiction of Saturn. Okay, so and you find all those elements graphically represented in this manuscript of the French translation, ancient French translation, so the Ovid moralisé, not the Ovidus moralisatus, but the Ovid moralisé. Yeah. Okay, let's move to another one. Where did I put it? Ah, there you go. There it is. Here's one of my favorite manuscripts in the world, with one of my favorite illumination ever, I think. The Lady of the Swans. I don't know what it is, but this is just beautiful. I haven't read the text around to figure out what this is supposed to picture, but I just love it. And now we'll go to Saturn represented. We'll see Saturn represented into that manuscript, and we'll see that we have a lot in common with what we saw in the other manuscript that I just showed you. So here we are in Gallica, and here you have it. So Saturn eating his children. Here you have Juno, Jupiter, you have the scythe, you have the dragon, you have Hades and Neptune, and then here is Rhea hiding her children and giving stones. You know, so Rhea is not, and she was not called Rhea in Bacchus, but is not always represented, but is seldom represented too, because she's also mentioned by Bacchus. And then here you have it, Jupiter cutting his father's balls, but we don't have Venus here. So we have Rhea hiding her children and feeding stones to Saturn, but we don't have the birth of Venus in this particular representation here. Now let's move on to another manuscript. We go back to the Ovid moralisé, so the French translation, but in prose, and not only in prose, but also printed. So the printed version. Yeah, this is the tale of Cadmos over there. The one that you see right now, that is Cadmos, killing the dragon and founding the city of Thebes. Why won't you go to the... Okay. No, this is not Saturn. Okay, here again, you see, here it's basically in the printed version of the prose rendition of the French translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses into French. Can get quite complicated. You also have a French translation of Bacchus' prologue, introduction. And so you see, I showed you a manuscript of Bacchus that included the picture of Adam and Eve and the snake and the tree and the forbidden fruit. And there you have it again. Just right there. Because the whole aim of the whole endeavor is to find the Bible story within the story of Ovid. Well, let's put it like that so that I can browse more easily and find a picture of Saturn somewhere. Yeah, this one is Apollo killing Python. This one is Pyrrha. Oh, this one doesn't have a Saturn. Maybe it should. This one is the first book. Ah, there it is. Okay, it was even before there. Yeah, it was even before that. So here you have it again, Saturn represented with the same elements. So you have Pluto here, you know, under the Earth. You have Neptune, you have Juno, you have Zeus, so Jupiter, cutting his father's balls. You have Saturn eating his children. You have his scythe. You have the dragon again, and you have Venus being born in the water after Jupiter throws his father's sex into the sea. So what is interesting is that in one single picture they depict several events that take times in different moments, of course, because first Saturn's eat his children, then Jupiter avenges brothers and sisters, frees them from his father's belly and cut his balls, and then Venus is born. But all of them are scrambled together in one single picture. And you find all the elements that were depicted in Bacchus' prologue. Okay? And I will finish on one last manuscript that I want to show now, and we'll dive deeper in those manuscripts in a part 2. We'll see God after God. But now I just wanted to introduce you to that literature. Okay, so which one? Where is the last one? Where did I save you? Here? Chronique de Hainaut. Yes, I found you. Okay. Yeah, so here we are on the website of the... Yeah, this one will take a bit of time. Yeah, so this is the website of the Brussels Royal Library, and it takes a bit of time to load the manuscripts. But then we see them and they're wonderful. So let me see if I had any... comments. Joseph Stalin is commenting the stream. I click on the link and I think it's the face of a full naked woman. First someone got their private part cut off, and it came out of a woman, and now someone comes put off his thigh. It's like a drama show from TV. Indeed, Teuton. I don't know if you're still there. I'm just reading your comments now because I was focusing on my story. But yes, indeed, it's quite a drama. When you look at Greek literature and Roman literature, I mean, come on. You can't make that stuff up. But they made that stuff up. They actually made it up. So is my manuscript ready? Still waiting for it? Come on, I have a good internet. It's supposed to be faster. Yeah, that website is very slow. Maybe it's fast with you if you try it, but and I want to show you that manuscript because in that manuscript, that is the a translation of the Annales Annoniae. You do have depictions of gods as they were figured in the ancient and fictitious, well, legendary city of Belgae. So you have a made-up city of Belgae that was founded by the first king of Belgae. And Ursus? Was it that guy who founded the city in the chronicle? I don't know. And basically he created temples for all the gods, and you have 7 temples. Well, no, 8 temples. The first temples includes an idol of Bacchus, because Bacchus was the most important god of all in Belgium back then. Figure. Go figure. We already like to drink so much. Ah, finally I have it. And also the other god that was presented in the main temple was the god Baal. Huh? You'd be like, what? Why? Because it was called Bel. And Bel, from Bel you have Belgium. Right? When I told you everything about made up etymology, I was not kidding. Now this manuscript is one of the most beautiful Burgundian manuscripts ever. A very, very famous one. And I will be finding the gods very shortly now. And so basically it is a translation of the Annales Annoniae written by Jacques de Guise. And Jacques de Guise, when writing about that fabulous city of Belgae and describing the temples and the idols within those temples, what did he use? He used Bacchus' text. And there you have it. So you have Bacchus, Jacques de Guise writing the Annales Annoniae, then it is translated into French by Jean de Vauquelin into the Chronique de Hainaut for the Duke of Burgundy, who was also Count of Hainaut. Go figure, if you go into that, there is another full drama scene to go on how the Duke of Burgundy acquired the county of Hainaut. He goes from you have a duel, you have a plot, an assassination plot and everything. No, it's a full-on other story, whatever. And here you have it, in his temple, the idol of Saturn eating his children with a scythe and the dragon. So the and is also always depicted as an old man, because that's how basically Bacchus describes him. He's an old man. And also Bacchus is riding a tiger. And look at that wonderful tiger. Isn't he pretty? This is basically a wolf, come on! This is a wolf, this is not a tiger. But as I told you at the very beginning of the stream, while reviewing that manuscript here, they didn't know how a tiger looked like. And if we go into that manuscript, where is... Oof, I think I have to move farther away. View mode, like this. Because if you find Bacchus in that manuscript, you'll see that the tiger, Bacchus' tiger, is again a totally different beast. Yeah, here he is. Whew, I was lucky. Found him right away. So this is Bacchus. Bacchus is depicted as a young man that has a woman-like face and showing his breast because he's half naked. Riding a tiger, and he has a vine crown on his head, and he also has horns. Here he doesn't have horns, but as you can see, the tiger is again another beast, totally a totally different other beast. Yeah. And is it in that manuscript that Bacchus is again with another creature? Let's see, just to show you. That is the lady of the swan. That is Venus. That is Neptune. So that is Pluto. So Bacchus is there. Yeah. So that's not the one I was thinking of. But as you can see here, the tiger again is beautiful. And in front of the tiger you have a mirror, and that is another legend totally. So here he has the horns, and he doesn't look like a woman at all. He doesn't have a woman-like face. He doesn't look like a kid, but he still shows his breast. He's riding a mythical creature that is a tiger. I've written an article about that on my blog if you're curious, and you have all the different representation of Bacchus over there. And then you have a mirror, because the mirror is an attribute of the tiger, not an attribute of Bacchus, but an attribute of the tiger, because you have that legend that the tiger is so fast that the only way to outrun him is to throw mirrors at him, so that he would get distracted, and by looking at the mirror he would think that the reflection is actually his own cub. So if you want to steal a tiger's cub, you have to arm yourself with mirrors and throw them, so that while the tiger is chasing you, it stops at every mirror, thinking that its reflection is its own cub, so that it can go away with the cub. And you have, if you look in bestiaries, you have actual depiction of riders stealing a tiger's cub, and you have the tiger looking at his own reflection in a mirror. So that pictorial tradition met the pictorial tradition of Bacchus in that picture over here, and in other pictures, but not here apparently. Not in there. And what I love in that manuscript, the Belgian manuscript of the Chronique de Hainaut, it is Venus. Why? Because you'll see in a moment, she's holding a mussel. Isn't that neat? Isn't that perfect for a Belgian manuscript, that Venus is holding a mussel? The only thing missing there are the fries and the mayonnaise, that's all I'm saying. But she has a mussel, it's perfect. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of the stream. I will dive more deeper into all those manuscripts that I just depicted, the Chronique of the Hainaut, the Ovid moralisé printed, the Échec amoureux moralisé, the Ovid moralisé in verse, but I will end up on this very manuscript here, because what happened is that and I think the PowerPoint is up to date. So you have the De Formis Figurisque Deorum. That was the prologue, the first chapter of the Ovidus Moralisatus written by Bercorius, but it was so popular that it started to be copied alone, as apart from the rest, and copied alone, and that's of course how it came into the hands of the artists that had to eliminate the manuscripts, of course. And here it is a wonderful copy where it is alone. So here you have the text of Bercorius, but without all the moral interpretation and everything. You just have the description. So the beginning of every god's description, because after that description, Bercorius gives a lot of interpretation. So why is Bacchus with horns? Why is he riding a tiger? Why why does he have a woman-like face? Why his breast is naked? Why is he a kid? He gives moral interpretation for all of that. Why is Satan eating his children? Why is he holding a scythe? Why is there a dragon? Why is he an old man? Why his balls are being cut off and everything? He gives interpretations for all of that. But so the text with interpretation was copied alone and circulated alone, and then you have an abridged version of that with only the description, without the interpretation, that circulated, and that's what we find here in that manuscript, with a beautiful hand drawing of the gods. So what is that now? Yeah, that is Vulcanus, but this is a different order, so he decided to pick and choose the order in which he would describe the gods. Yeah, because when you copy the manuscript to put it into another manuscript, you would never respect the author's work. You would recreate everything according to your need, if needed. And here you have Mars. So it starts with Saturn. We barely can see it. So we have the three brothers. The two brothers. So here you have Hades. I think that is Pluto because I can see horns, so it must be some kind of a devil. Here you must have Neptune because Jupiter is here cutting his father's balls. Here you have a scythe that doesn't look exactly like a scythe. Here you have Rhea trying to save her children. Here you have Venus being born. Here you have Jupiter cutting his father's balls. Here you have the little dragon. Here you have Juno. You have all the elements that are here depicted. Saturnus, Pinus, Pignibuntu, and Utomosenex, and that is a text from that we can see in the manuscript we saw a bit before of the Ovidis Marizatus. It's basically the same text. Here you have the description of Jupiter. Won't go into the full of that, and then you have representation of all the gods, but he altered here the order because you have Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and then who do we have? Oh no, you have Apollo, so that's normal. Here you have Python, the big thing that he killed. Here you have the Graces, I think. Well, you have the adorators of Apollo. And then you have Venus. Yeah, of course, Venus, born in the water. You have her husband, Hephaestus here. You have Cupido, his son. You have the three Graces, so the three ladies of Apollo, of Venus, and everything. And that is again the text of that is basically all that we find in Bergoglio's text. And again here it's in Latin. And next time I will go into French literature, but the thing is that we haven't done the whole run of the Latin literature because I haven't even talked about Boccaccio. And Boccaccio also has given his own description of the pagan gods. And you have manuscripts with those gods represented according to Boccaccio's descriptions. Okay? But I don't think I will talk about Boccaccio next time. I will talk about other things. But I wanted to talk about that this time. So the main websites I've been on this stream are the website of the Digital Library of the Vatican. You can find many manuscripts over there. Woo! Look at that pan. And here you must have Pluto. And then you have Minerva here. Isn't she pretty? Goddess of war, Pallas Athena, Minerva. And here you have Diana. Yeah, Diana. Is that Actium being turned into a deer? Yes, I think it is. Okay. I also found digitized manuscript here on E-Codices, that is the digitized library of the Library of Geneva. Of course, Gallica, must see, and then the KBR, the website of the Royal Library of Belgium, and those are the main website. And of course, I went to another one from the CNRS. But next time, we'll also go on the... Oh, come on. Where is it? Where did I save it? Oh. It's called the Épître d'Othea, and there is a beautiful copy of that in... oh, I have a few bestiaries here. So maybe I can show you the bestiary. Maybe if we have the tiger over here. Ah, so over here. There won't be any tiger apparently in this manuscript. But digitized manuscript of the British Library. We'll go there next time to see the Épître d'Othea from Christine Le Pisan. And we also went to the BMVV, I think. That was for another copy of Petrus Bergoglius. Getting just a tiny bit tired here, I'm sorry. Bacchus here. So yeah, this website, BVMM, Bibliothèque Virtuelle des Manuscrits Médiévaux. So I like to move around a lot, and go on different websites to find different kind of sources, and also show that actually the process of digitizing book is still a work in progress, because sometimes you do have a ruler, sometimes you do have a color palette, color card, but you don't always have that. Sometimes you have very extensive descriptions of the manuscript, sometimes you don't have it. And so the process of digitizing manuscripts is still something, still a work in progress. Still something that universities and libraries have to refine. And also what we need absolutely now, need very deeply, is a way to go through all those digitized manuscripts online and just type, for example, Petrus Bercorius and find all of the manuscripts in which we can find a work of his. But that doesn't exist anymore. That doesn't exist yet, and I don't think there is any project of creating something like that yet. But if we could have that, that would be the pinnacle. It would be the total dream, and the cream for that. So let's go back to the possible. Yeah, Teuton, that was a tiger indeed. This stuff is so weird. I don't understand how people actually thought of death. Well, Teuton, there was a different time. People thought of different things. They had a different thought process that we have today. And indeed, what you saw here with Bacchus and here, that's supposed to be a tiger, because when you look at the text here, it is actually said that, yes, here, right here, coronato, meaning vitibus coronato, so he has a crown of vines, qui super tigrides equitabat. So he's actually riding a tiger, and this is a tiger. But since they didn't know how a tiger looked like back then, they would depict it as a very fast kind of animal, and that's why it looks a bit like a horse, a bit like something else, a bit like a... But then you have like the lion, they really know how to depict it. The monkey, they know how to depict it. The boar, no problem, there's a very well-known beast. But the tiger, they don't know that's so far, that's a beast from India. And we have to wait until the very end of the 15th century to have a tiger back in northern Italy, to have an actual tiger back on Europe's soil, according to the sources that we have, of course. Maybe there was one before that, but we don't know about it. But the earliest trace of a tiger being back on the European continent is at the very end of the period we call the Middle Ages, in the 15th century. It's maybe even the modern times, because I think it's around 1470-ish, something like that. And so that is after the fall of Byzantium and before the discovery of America. So it's basically it's not the Middle Ages anymore at that time. So during the Middle Ages, the tiger is a mythical creature just as much as the unicorn, and that is a tiger. And we started the stream on that picture, and we will end that stream on that picture. And we will do a brief recap of everything we learned in this stream. So, picturing the pagan gods in medieval manuscripts, part 1, when you still think it's quite straightforward. And as you saw, it was not straightforward. So, first we have Ovid, of course, that wrote the Metamorphoses, that marvelous work of art and literature that survived through the ages, in which he told the stories of the gods and heroes of pagan times, of ancient times. But he didn't bother with giving any description of them. He just wrote their stories and intertwined them all in a wonderful frame of work. And then you have in the 12th century that is called the Aetas Ovidiana. So that's when Ovid is like the must read. Everybody's crazy about Ovid at that time in medieval scholarship. And ARNULF of ORLÉANS is someone that reads Ovid in the cathedral school and that would become the University of Orléans, and it gives a grammatical commentary, a vocabulary commentary of it, but also a commentary of the content itself. So he writes the Allegoriae, and in the Allegoriae he explains how the fables actually mean something else. And that was taken up by John of Garland, who in the same line would write the Integumenta Ovidi, which is a long poem, well, not so long, which gives like three verses, mostly two verses, and in 2 verses you have a summary of the explanations of the fables, of all those commentary. So, for example, the fable of Europe being captured by Jupiter in Phoenicia and being transported into Crete. Well, you have this, you know the story. It's Jupiter that turns into a bull to seduce Europe, and Europe is like, "Oh, this is a wonderful bull," and then she wants to ride the bull, and Jupiter is like, and it goes right into the sea, and she's like, "Oh my God!" And Jupiter paddles, swims as a bull from the coast of Turkey, well, from the coast of Asia to Crete, and that is why Europe is called Europe, boys. And but in John of Garland, the Integumenta Ovidi, the explanation is that in 2 verses he explains that Europe actually traveled on a boat on which a bull was painted, a Taurus was painted, and then he gives explanation for all the myths, all the fables of Metamorphoses. And then you have a tradition of glosses being incorporated in manuscript, including the Metamorphoses. So you have the Metamorphoses being copied into manuscripts, and along you have the main lines of the poem itself, and then between the lines you have a few textual commentaries, grammatical commentaries, and all around you have glosses explaining the fables. Oh, but that fables, that means something else. It means that actually this is a representation of a vice, of a sin. This is a representation of a virtue. This is actually behind that you can understand the story of Christ himself. This is not the story about how Bacchus is born, but this is a story of how to cultivate your vine in order to get wine. And that Vulgate commentary, as we saw, was very extensive, very big. You have 2 margins, 2 margins of glosses, 2 columns of glosses around the Ovidian text, and that was read by Petrus Bercorius, who then wrote his Ovidus Moralizatus. So it's one single text in which he gives a commentary of Ovid's Metamorphoses. So you don't find there the Metamorphoses themselves. You're supposed to know them. You're supposed to know their content. And Bercorius gives the commentary, and he improvises, makes up a lot of commentaries himself. He's a theologian. He's allowed to do that. He's a doctor of the university, so he makes up a lot of things. But since Ovid gave no descriptions of the gods, in order to help his reader, Petrus Bercorius gives an introduction. That is the prologue of his 15th of the Ovidus Moralizatus, the De Formis Figurasque Dearum, in which he describes all the gods, and not only describes them, but also gives a moralization, a commentary on their own description. So why is Bacchus represented with horns? Why is he crowned? Why is he sitting on a tiger? Why is he a young child with a woman-like face, naked breast, everything? Well, all of that has an explanation, not only one, but 2 explanations. Sometimes it can be understood in different ways, and as long as those interpretations give way to something that is true, and that is true to the dogma and true to the Christian morals, it's good. It's perfectly good. We don't care if those interpretations are opposing each other. You know, like when you go to school now, you have to interpret a text and see what was the author thinking. Why is the door blue? A stupid example. Why is the turtle flying? Why is the apple green? Oh, the apple is green because the green represents the evil. Why? Why does it represent evil? Why would the author think that? Well, if it is given somewhere in the text, or if we know from the context, maybe yes, but so. In the Middle Ages, they knew about author intent, but they knew that in order to interpret the text, you didn't have to care about the author intent. You had to care about what was true, and what was true to them was the teachings of the Bible, the teaching of Jesus Christ. And as long as you couldn't find any kind of representations, any kind of anything that looked like Jesus' teachings into the pagan fables, that was good. Even though it was two different teachings into to be understood with one single fables, that was good. And of course, it was in no way simply a way of saying that within that all religions are alike, because you have now that thinking of that theory of that is called the pantheism, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the term I'm using here, but in which, for example, all the religions say the same thing, and it's very easy to think of that when you try to compare the Muslim religion, the Catholic religion, the Christian religion, and the Judean religion, because basically they're based on the same foundation that is the Old Testament, and they have one single God. It's a bit more difficult to say that the animic religion of Native Americans is the same religion than the Christian religion, but you still find people to make that up. But that was in no way the attempt of the medieval scholar. No. The whole purpose of the interpretative work was to go back to the Christian teachings. From something that was very far away from it, to go back to it, and so that, for example, the fabled pagan stories would be then tolerable. Okay, and in order to describe his gods, Petrus Bercorius found an exhaustive description of them in the poem Africa, written by Petrarch. Petrarch was his friend. He was able to read Africa, and Petrarch was crowned best poet of his time because of that poem that was Africa. Whew, that is a lot of information that I gave today. And then the prologue of Bacchus, in which he describes a god, circulated by himself, in and for himself, with and without the commentary, and that was then given to artists to illuminate manuscripts in which we would find pagan gods. And that is why in many manuscripts containing different and various kind of works, textual works from different authors, we would have description of pagan gods that would look alike or contain at least the same elements. They will not look alike because every artist is giving his own interpretation of the text, of Bacchus' text, but what is certain is that what is certain? Is that all those pictures include some of the same elements. You won't find Rhea in all of Saturn's. For example, here I have Bacchus, so let's stay on Bacchus. You won't see the tiger being depicted every time the same, but you will always have a tiger. You won't see horns on Bacchus all the time, but you will always have many elements that would be the same in different manuscripts from different type of works. Okay, that was the first overview, and I think we did it great, right? Okay, so let's go to the chat, see if anyone has chatted. Not anymore. And now it's time for me to end the stream. How long has it been now? I started around 9 a.m. It is almost 11, and I will edit the stream later so that it fits like a nice YouTube video. Thank you for tuning in if you tuned in. Thank you for watching the show. This is very, very kind of you for sticking in. And well, the video will be always available on YouTube. I will edit it a bit so that we'll cut down, shorten the intro and should shorten the outro. And okay, so there we go. I must say goodbye now because I need to walk my dog and go to bed. It's already 11 and then because I have to go to work tonight. Okay, so I hope you have a very pleasant day. In the end, we are accompanied here by the music of the Shire, which was quite nice actually. And voila, baguette. That is for Teuton, who has the nickname of Joseph Stalin. Yeah, bye, dude. So see you next time. So there was no Age of Empires 2 today. There won't be any streaming, I think, tomorrow because tomorrow I want to write. Tomorrow is what day again? We are Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. So maybe next stream will be on next Tuesday or next Wednesday. Next Tuesday or next Wednesday I'll be streaming. But back to Age of Empires on Twitch. Yep, if you want to be able to tune in on my streams, follow me on Twitter or subscribe on YouTube. On YouTube, I present digitized manuscripts. On Twitch, I play Age of Empires 2 and then give a historical commentary of it. So I play the campaigns. I'm not a pro player. I play the campaigns quite slowly. Sometimes I fail, and that is always funny to see me fail. And yeah, you also have a blog that you can go peruse at your own leisure. Let me show you my blog at least. Okay, on my blog I will write an article about those pagan gods. It's in writing. I haven't finished it. It will be very abbreviated. Now the stream was like 2 hours long, and that was only the introduction, the part 1. But yeah, there will be an article to compact it all in short paragraphs, and you will also have all the pictures of all the gods, and that I will present next stream. But this next YouTube stream should be next week, either on Wednesday morning or Thursday morning, maybe exactly in a week. So let's say I think the 4th of July, on the 4th of July, important day for America. And so I will be diving deeper into not the Latin manuscript, but into the French manuscript containing the pictures of the god. As I told you, in Latin manuscripts you don't have many pictures, many illuminations, because they were addressed to scholars, and as we saw, sometimes the writing was a bit fast. In a few manuscripts we saw that the writing contained a lot of abbreviations, was a bit fastly done, but that is not the case in French manuscripts, because in French manuscripts we are writing they were written for princes, and so it's lavishly illuminated. The writing is much more detailed, yeah. And so here's my blog. And on my blog, if you go, for example, medieval memes, for example, you look wild boars, werewolves. Where are you? Oh, I don't see Bacchus. Where are you? All your many pies, historiography, second method. Ah, you have tigers. Here, you have just tigers over there. You click there on tigers. And here you have a Q&A that I answered on Reddit, where fantastical monsters and animals thought of in the same way in medieval Europe. And here I try to answer that question by the pictures of Bacchus that we see here. You see Bibliotheca Apostolica Vaticana, the manuscript Reglat. That's the manuscript we saw. And then you have all the depictions of Bacchus, here on a horse, here on a beast that is half horse, half dog, half panther, we don't know. Here, yeah, this is a tiger, all right. And here you have, yes, this is beautiful because it's in the Aberdeen bestiary. You do have here the story I told about the how to stole a tiger cub from his mother. So you have the mother here looking at the mirror, looking at her own reflection, thinking that is a cub, and you have to throw the mirrors on your way out because the tiger runs so fast that it would catch you up. Well, why would the tiger run so fast? Because according to a fake etymology, again, the tiger is named after the river Tigris in Mesopotamia, in Iraq, and it was supposed to be the fastest river on earth. Here again, Bacchus. Again, Bacchus. And again, you see the tiger has many shapes and forms. And here again, the young cub being stolen. And here the mother looking at her own reflection in that manuscript from the British Library. A tiger being lured by a hunter. Okay, so here you have already a few reading if you want, and with the full references of the pictures and the manuscripts, I've perused a bit in here, but the rest of the article is in writing and is incoming. So more on that story next week, and also find me on Twitch if you want to see me talk about Age of Empires 2 and history. At the moment, with Age of Empires 2, I'm more talking about chivalry, and log on my blog to see what I'm writing, and have fun, basically. So, sayonara, goodbye. Goodbye. Yep. How do I shut that down? Hello? Oh, do you want to see me my dog sing? Nanu? You'll see my dog sing. She needs to sing. I think there are people watching, so... My dog will be singing for you to say goodbye. So this is my own tiger. How does that thing... come, no, I'm not showing my dog here. Okay. Then you... Mon amour. Yeah, so she's saying goodbye to all of you, and I'm going to walk her now so that she can have a little poop. And see you next time. Bye.